Hey guys, welcome to our channel Mystery Recaps. Today, we will recap a 1998 psychological movie named The Truman Show. Truman Burbank is an insurance salesman who lives an ordinary life in Sea Haven. He is married to a pretty nurse named Meryl and has lived on the island his entire life. One day, while he's about to leave for work, a strange object comes flying from the sky and crashes near him. Curious, Truman goes to check the object and sees the sky but finds it clear. Without bothering much, he heads for work, and on the way, the radio mentions a malfunctioning aircraft flying over the island, sheds some of its parts, and he believes it to be true. At his office, he secretly calls Fiji to get information about a woman named Lauren, but Truman fails to do so and hangs up the phone. At the same time, his boss Lawrence approaches and orders him to finalize the deal. After a while, Truman reaches Harbor Island, but cannot gather the courage to board the boat. He has a fear of open water, and it makes his return back to the office. Later that night, Truman hangs out with his best friend Marlon and tells him about his plan to explore the world, especially Fiji. After Marlon leaves, Truman sits by the beach alone and starts reminiscing about his father, who died in a boat accident. The weather was terrible that day, and Truman's father suggested they return home. However, a young Truman insisted on staying a bit longer. Shortly after, they find themselves surrounded by waves. Truman somehow saved himself, but his father was not so fortunate. Since that day, Truman has had a fear of open water. Right then, it starts raining, but only where he is. It confuses Truman, and it starts raining everywhere, where he stands up to check. After reaching home, Truman tells his wife he wants to travel the entire world. However, Meryl rejects his idea, saying that they're not doing financially well, and instead, she suggests having babies. The following day, as Truman is on his way to the office, he passes a homeless man who looks just like his father. Truman walks back and tries to talk to him, but before he can say something, some unknown people arrive and take the homeless man away in a bus. Truman quickly follows the bus, but he fails to do so. Later, he shares the incident with his mother, but she calls it his wistful imagination. Later that night, Truman goes to the basement and opens an old trunk containing his belongings. He looks at some old pictures and comes across a red female sweater. The sweater has a pin stating, "How's it going to end?" The sweater takes Truman to his college days, where he is practicing with his band. Suddenly, he sees a girl named Lauren and cannot take his eyes off of her. But before he can approach her, Meryl bumps into him, and Lauren is gone. As time passes, Meryl and Truman become close, but he still cannot get Lauren out of his head. One day, Truman meets Lauren at the library and asks her for dinner. Lauren replies that she's not allowed to speak with him, and then she quickly writes the word "now," implying she can go out with him. Then they sneak out of the library, avoiding all the cameras, and run towards the beach. However, a camera still manages to catch them. As soon as they arrive at the beach, they start making out. Suddenly, a vehicle approaches them, and Lauren starts panicking. Lauren then tells Truman that her real name is Sylvia. She also says that the whole world he's living in is fake. Just then, an older man claiming Lauren's father steps out of the car and says she's mentally unstable. The older man also says they'll be moving to Fiji and that Truman should not look for her anymore. At the same time, Lauren asks him to come and find her. After they leave, Truman is left alone with Lauren's sweater. Why do you think Lauren had to leave like that? Pause the video and let us know in the comment section. Truman then returns to his present self, where he's trying to recreate Lauren's face with the help of scraps from magazines. The next morning, while Truman is on his way to work, the car radio suddenly starts broadcasting about Truman, like the direction he's driving. Surprised by the incident, Truman gets out of his car and runs towards a building. He tries to enter the elevator, but he sees two people wearing mics and headphones, as if they're broadcasting something. As soon as they see Truman, they quickly run away. Right then, some security guards grab him and throw him out. Truman then runs into his friend Marlon and explains all the strange occurrences. However, Marlon dismisses it as his imagination. Later at home, Meryl and Truman's mother are looking through some old family pictures. Just then, a show on TV mentions that now people can travel the world while at home. After a while, the ladies leave and Truman starts going through his wedding pictures. He then notices Meryl crossing her fingers in each photo, implying that she did not marry him truthfully. The next day, Truman leaves for the airport to fly to Fiji, but finds no available flights. He then boards a bus from Chicago to fly from there. Unfortunately, the bus breaks down. Later, when Meryl returns home from duty, she finds Truman sitting inside his car. Truman invites her inside to look at his correctly predicted chain of events around him. He then locks the car and takes Meryl for a ride out of the island. Truman escapes the traffic and stops at the bridge, which connects Sea Haven Island to the rest of the world. Truman hesitates at first because of his fear of water, but then hits the gas with his eyes closed. They successfully cross the bridge. However, they are stopped by cops, saying that a nearby power plant has leaked. Truman then decides to return home, but an officer says his name, though they have never met. Truman gets suspicious and tries to escape from the island. Unfortunately, he gets caught and sent back home. Later at night, Meryl tries to convince Truman that everything is fine, and to cheer him up, she offers him a drink, but describes it as if she's advertising. In a state of anger, Truman grabs Meryl and threatens her to reveal everything going on around them. What do you think Meryl will tell Truman now? Pause the video and let us know in the comment section. Before Meryl can tell him anything, they get interrupted when Marlon arrives and takes him out for beers. Marlon then tries to convince Truman that everything is normal and says he can never lie to his best friend. That is when a man named Christoph is instructing Marlon what to say. It seems that Christoph is the director of The Truman Show, where the lead character is Truman himself. Elsewhere, Marlon reveals that Truman was right about his father. Truman's father Kirk appears, and Truman hugs his father with eyes full of tears. That is when it becomes apparent that Truman is the star of the most watched live television broadcast in the world, and he is completely unaware that everything is a lie. The island is just a massive set under a protective dome, which uses advanced effects and visuals to control the sky, weather, and temperature. The director can control the entire dome. Christoph has been filming Truman since his birth. Later, in an interview, Christoph reveals how he planted the fear of water into Truman. Sylvia then calls the program and scolds Christoph for imprisoning Truman without his knowledge. Christoph says that if Truman finds out about the truth of the show, he is free to leave. Do you think Truman will be able to leave the fake island? Let's watch ahead. Make sure you hit the like button if you are enjoying the video. The next day, Truman returns to his everyday life, even though Meryl left him. After Meryl leaves, Truman moves into the basement. One day, Christoph can't see Truman anywhere. Soon, Christoph realizes that something is wrong. He immediately orders someone to call Truman's house, but gets no answer. Christoph then sends Marlon to his house, but he does not find Truman. Christoph then cuts the live transmission for the first time. The interruption in the broadcast worries the whole world. Christoph then orders the entire crew to search for Truman. Christoph soon realizes that Truman has escaped to the one place nobody thought about, the sea. He quickly directs his cameras there and finds Truman sailing in a single boat. Christoph resumes the live broadcast and sends a bunch of crew members to retrieve Truman. But the crew members have no idea how to operate a boat. Christoph then uses his weather simulation program to scare Truman, but he does not budge. After a few failed attempts, Christoph finally gives up. Truman ultimately pierces through the fake sky and climbs up a staircase until he reaches an exit door. When Truman is about to open the exit door, Christoph speaks with him for the first time and introduces himself as the one who has been watching him since his birth. Christoph then tries persuading him to remain on the island, claiming that the outer world is full of pain and sorrow. Truman, however, tells Christoph that he never had cameras in his head and does not know Truman as well as he thinks he does. Truman then greets Christoph and leaves the place. Seeing this, Sylvia becomes happy and rushes out of her room. The movie ends as people celebrate the end of The Truman Show, and Christoph cuts off the live transmission. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe button, and bell icon to watch more exciting movie recaps.